Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight. It is here, finally, an hour from now at 9 p.m. Eastern, the first presidential debate of the 2020 election cycle. It's live from Cleveland, Ohio. It's just 60 minutes from now. And yet it is still hard to believe this is really going to happen. Apparently it is. Joe Biden. Biden has run for president 3 times. At no point up until the moment he unexpectedly won the Democratic nomination have the people around him taken Biden seriously as a national political leader. Barack Obama certainly didn't. He famously mocked Joe Biden for 8 years. So did many in the U.S. Senate when he served there. Biden's peers in Washington have been making fun of Joe Biden for 50 years. Many of those people are gone now. Joe Biden will soon be 78 years old. He is the oldest man ever to run for president on a major ticket. It shows. Biden is fading. No honest person denies that. During the Democratic primary debates, Biden lost his way in the middle of an exchange about health care. Former HUD Secretary Julian Castro looked incredulous. "Are you forgetting already what you said just 2 minutes ago?" Castro asked. Many in the crowd applauded that line. It was nice to hear someone say the obvious out loud. At that moment, it seemed inconceivable that Democrats would choose a man like Joe Biden to face off against an instinctive predator like Donald Trump. But then Bernie Sanders of Vermont surged in the polls, came very close to winning the whole thing. And the Democratic establishment panicked. Within weeks, Joe Biden got the nomination. It's a risk to run a candidate who may be senile, but as far as Wall Street was concerned, it was not a tough call. They found Bernie Sanders' economic populism terrifying. So here we are. We'll be honest, and if you watch the show, you already know this, and concede that we never thought Biden would show up tonight. His handlers have hidden him for months. They were fearful that unscripted talking might tank their campaign. And yet we're about to see Joe Biden on stage for 90 minutes straight, no handlers in sight. How will that go? Well, the Trump campaign is convinced that Biden's staff will try to feed him lines through an earpiece. They've called for a third-party inspection of the candidate's ears before airtime. Apparently, the Biden campaign has refused.
Look, they agreed to the ear inspection. It's simple. It would have been by third party, not by us. And then they went back on it. Why? I don't know. I mean, they'll have to explain that. But look, regardless of the pre-game tactics, I do believe that there's going to be really a revelation, an unmasking of sorts for the American public of who Joe Biden really is.
They agreed to the ear inspection, the third-party ear inspection. Has there ever been a presidential debate like the one tonight? No, there never has been. We're going to take you to Showtime at 9 p.m. this hour. We're going to talk to some of the smartest people we know for context, perspective, and predictions for what we're about to see. We're going to start, of course, with Fox News' senior political analyst, Britt Hume, who we're happy to have always. Britt, great to see you.
Thank you, Tucker.
Leaving aside the question of whether third-party ear inspections were in fact agreed upon, it's just too amazing. What are we likely to see tonight?
Well, I suspect that the president will do his best to try to get Biden off his game and rattle him and hope that the confusion that senile people often experience will come into play.
Yes.
But I don't think that can be counted on, and I'm not sure it was at all wise for the president to talk as he did for weeks on end about how out of it Joe Biden is. Because remember the last debate, it was just the two of them, Biden and Bernie. A televised debate very much like what we're going to have tonight. And Biden did just fine. Elderly people experiencing memory loss and the other problems associated with age can have, go for periods of hours at a time and be just fine. I don't think there's any doubt Biden's senile, but that doesn't mean he's going to show up tonight. And I suspect he'll be well prepped. I think he'll be well briefed. And, anything can happen. But I don't think anybody ought to count on him having a bad night. And now that the expectations for him have been set so low, if he comes out and doesn't drool and gets through everything pretty well, it could end up being quite a boost for him.
That's a very smart point, I think. So all of the conversation, or most of it anyway, at least on the right, has been around Biden's capability. Can he do this? Will he show? We've spent a lot of time talking about that. Looks like we were wrong. Very little conversation has taken place about what they're going to talk about. What are the issues? Where are the flashpoints likely to occur, do you think?
Well, Chris Wallace laid out the areas, beginning with the records of the two men, something President Trump has been talking about a lot lately. He will argue, of course, that he's done more, and as he's saying now, more than 47 months, and Biden did in 47 years. But Biden will have things to say about things he's accomplished and advice he's given and roles he's played, and particularly as vice president under Barack Obama and so on. So he'll manage to score some points. The president may as well. And then, of course, you're going to get into COVID-19, a weak point for the president, at least in terms of public opinion at this stage. I think Biden will be tough on him on that. The president has a defensible record. It's not at all clear to me that he's done a very good job of defending it or making the case for it. You know, the issue of the president's taxes and how little he's paid in taxes will come up. The president has called it all fake news. Look, there's a case to be made that he is acting legitimately by taking advantage of the various tax exclusions and so on that the tax code provides businessmen and women with big complex businesses often have, you know, losses from one enterprise offset by, gains from one enterprise offset by losses in another. You hear tax experts talking about harvesting losses, and many of them pay very little in taxes. Warren Buffett has said, you know, who is very much a Democrat and popular on the left to some extent, has said that, you know, he pays more taxes than his secretary did. So this is not uncommon, but it doesn't look good. And the president needs to, you know, will need to have an answer to that that's better than just calling it fake news. So those are some key areas. There'll be others as well, but, you know, that'll give you a sense of where they'll be going.
Now, it's been the case for a long time. Our tax code has changed somewhat during the last 4 years, but the loopholes, the exclusions that made the president's tax returns possible remain. Do you think the White House regrets allowing Republican leadership to craft the tax bill and not fix what most people think is a problem?
Well, the cycle of this has been pretty clear. You know, back in 1987, which seems not as long ago to you probably as it feels much longer ago to you than it does to me at my stage of life. You know, they had a sweeping tax reform bill and cut the rates in exchange for closing a lot of these loopholes. But they creep back into the tax code because, you know, people come before Congress and they say, look, what I'm doing is causing a problem, or I'm doing green energy and I need help. And so Congress it puts these exclusions and benefits into the tax code to promote causes and industries and so on. And before you know it, you got an enormously complex tax code that smart tax lawyers acting on behalf of businesses can find ways to cut people's tax bills way down. It goes on all the time. It always has. And, you know, I think, you know, the president might be wise to come out and say he's all for closing these loopholes. But, you know, it's going to be used against him tonight for sure. Yeah, it will. Well, I should just say, I don't know if you can see this, Britt. We have a live shot up on the screen. Joe Biden has just arrived by limo at the debate hall in Cleveland. Many people predicted that he would not show. The show was among them. Actually made a bet with Dana Perino. Looks like we just lost it. Are you surprised? I was surprised he agreed to 3. I thought he probably felt he had to agree to at least 1 or maybe 2. And look, because I think, you know, as I've said, there's a distinct possibility he could have a good night tonight and be sharp and clear the way he was in that last debate with Bernie Sanders. Right. I think the odds are a little more against him if he does this 3 times, as he is committed to do. So it remains to be seen. But remember this, Tucker, the first debate is often the most important, particularly in a case like this where we have basically seen so little of Biden. You know, we see Trump all the time. You know, you can't, you know, you turn on the radio, you turn on the television, and there he is. He's out there talking all the time. A lot of people are tired of hearing from him and hearing about him. But this is going to be, you know, Biden as to an extent we haven't seen. It'll be interesting. It could be the most important debate. Probably will be. I think that's probably right. Britt Hume, thanks so much for that. You bet, Tucker. Well, we played the tape for you over the past 6 months. Joe Biden sometimes forgets where he went to school or where he is. But what can you expect from Joe Biden on the debate stage? That's less than an hour from now. Rick Leventhal collecting some of the great Joe Biden performances of the past. Hey, Rick.
Hey, Tucker, no doubt the Trump campaign is hoping to trip up their Democratic opponent and hoping he'll trip himself, and he might, based on past experience and performance when he didn't say exactly what he probably meant to say.
150 million people have been killed since 2007 when Bernie voted to exempt the gun manufacturers from liability. Nobody should be in jail for a nonviolent crime. Play the radio. Make sure the television, make sure you have the record player on at night. No man has a right to raise a hand to a woman in anger other than in self-defense, and that's rarely ever occurs. And so we have to just change the culture, period, and keep punching at it and punching at it and punching at it.
There could also be an opportunity for President Trump to remind his opponent that his choice for VP didn't hold back in attacking the Delaware senator when the two squared off as potential nominees in their own debate last summer.
I'm going to now direct this at Vice President Biden. I do not believe you are a racist, but you also worked with them to oppose busing. And, you know, there was a little girl in California who was part of the second class to integrate her public schools. And she was bused to school every day. And that little girl was me.
Tucker, we are on standby for fireworks here in Los Angeles.
We certainly are. I don't think I've looked forward to politicians talking like I am now in a long time. Are you watching tonight, Rick?
Oh, of course. It should be very exciting. And full disclosure, Tucker, I am wearing an earpiece.
So am I. We've got no third party in our studio checking.
Right.
This is Fox News. Great to see you, Rick. Thank you.
You too.
Well, one topic we're certain will come up tonight will be the coronavirus and the federal response to it. That makes sense because, according to Joe Biden, the coronavirus has killed more than 200 million Americans, which is to say most people in this country are now dead, whether they know it or not. We'll tell you what that conversation is going to look like. But starting now and continuing through this evening's debates, you can get exclusive blogs and instant analysis at the Fox News Democracy 2020 Live experience. Think of it as a companion to the debate you're watching. To log in, head over to foxnews.com/2020live or open the camera app on your phone. Scan the QR code, assuming you know what that is, and it'll bring you right there. We'll be right back. We're less than an hour from the first presidential debate of 2020, taking place in Cleveland, Ohio. Earlier this month, Joe Biden claimed that Donald Trump, the sitting president, is responsible for every single death in the United States caused by coronavirus. Biden looked at the data, the fact checkers confirmed it, so he went with it. Here he is.
If the president had done his job from the beginning, all the people would still be alive. All the people, I'm not making this up, just look at the data.
I'm not making this up, Joe Biden says. Well, we know that coronavirus will play a role in the debate tonight, of course. What will they say about it? Alex Berenson is the author of Unreported Truths about COVID-19 and the lockdowns, Part 2. We're happy to have him on tonight. So, Alex, I'm wondering what you think if you were Donald Trump. And I have no idea what your political views are, but let's just say you were advising the president tonight. What would you tell him to say?
Sure. I mean, Donald Trump has never been able to make this case, okay? But what Joe Biden said is clearly untrue. All over Europe, whatever strategies they've pursued, they've had roughly the same death rate as the United States. If I were Donald Trump tonight, I'd say, look, we can be Sweden or we can be Spain. Sweden didn't lock down. They got through this, it looks like. They have almost no new cases now. Even the New York Times today just posted a story about how well Sweden is doing. Or yes, we can be Spain. Spain locked down early. They locked down hard. They had terrible unemployment. They actually had more deaths than Sweden and more deaths than the United States per capita. And guess what? After one of the hardest lockdowns in the world, and a lockdown that caused their economy to contract by 23% in the first and second quarters combined, basically the worst performance anywhere in the world, now they've unlocked, and because they didn't allow the epidemic to take its natural course, they're having a second epidemic right now. And by the way, Spain today had more per capita deaths than the United States, and forget Sweden, but more per capita deaths than the United States. It's not even close. And there was a riot, or we'll say a violent protest last night in Spain about an effort to impose a second lockdown, which they really don't even want to do, but they're afraid they're going to have to do in parts of Madrid. And people are so blown out by what's happened to the economy there that they don't want it. So if I were Donald Trump, I'd say, You go ahead and be Spain, Joe Biden. You go ahead and listen to Dr. Fauci and impose another lockdown if that's what you want, and impose a whole bunch of stuff that's never been proven to do anything. I'm going to go with Sweden. I'm going to go with Arizona and Florida. I'm going to let people live their lives. Americans trust the healthcare system to take care of them if they get sick.
Yes.
That's what happened in the Sun Belt this year. And guess what? In a lot of the Sun Belt, people are basically back to living their lives. The unemployment rate in a state like Georgia is less than half the unemployment rate in a state like New York right now.
Well, you're seeing the governor of Florida almost make that case out loud. I mean, he almost, Florida took a huge amount of grief, as you know, for the past several months. And now the governor is basically saying we did the right thing by not getting hysterical. He seems to be right.
That's right. Well, you know, what I call team reality, the people who really understand the data and have looked at this for the last 6 months need to push back. And they need to say schools need to reopen. They're reopened all over the world. Why aren't they reopened here? Lockdowns never were proven to do anything effective except possibly delay the spread here. Why would we even consider that again? Let's forget masks. Let's even take masks off the table right now. Let's talk about no lockdowns ever again, no school closings. We're going to get our kids back to school. If you're rich, your kid is getting education right now, whether it's in an educational pod or a fancy private school. If you're poor, your kid is getting terrible treatment right now in most big city public schools. At best, a couple hours of Zoom instruction a day. At worst, not even that.
That is so right. It takes courage to say that, and the few who have, you, Dr. Scott Atlas, have been vilified for doing it, but I'm glad you're doing it anyway. Alex Berenson, thank you.
Thanks, Tucker.
So Amy Coney Barrett was nominated to the Supreme Court by the president over the weekend. Democrats are enraged by this. Ahead of the debate tonight, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris both refused to rule out packing the Supreme Court, enlarging the size of it, putting more Democrats on it. They claim Trump's nomination of Coney Barrett is illegitimate. Listen to a fake war hero explain how it is.
I simply refuse to treat this process, a sham, illegitimate process, as really legitimate.
And the process was so illegitimate that I don't want to validate it.
This process has been illegitimate from the beginning and rushed.
They're undermining their legitimacy, the legitimacy of the Supreme Court.
We need to think seriously about everything we can do to try to slow this down and to show how illegitimate this whole process is.
Looks like the talking points have been issued. Illegitimate. You're hearing that on all the other channels, 24 hours a day. So we thought it'd be interesting to speak to someone who actually knows Amy Coney Barrett. We haven't done that yet. Lexi Baltus knows her well. She's one of Amy Coney Barrett's former law students. She went on to become one of the judge's clerks at the 7th Court of Appeals. She joins us tonight, and we're happy about it. Lexi, thanks so much for coming on. Okay, let me just ask you the first and obvious question. What is she like as a person, Amy Coney Barrett, Judge Barrett?
She's like the person that you've seen, the person you saw Saturday, the person you saw in 2017. She's a person of uncommon grace, kindness, warmth, and integrity. She's also a person of courage and conviction and firmly committed to applying her role impartially.
It must be odd for you, knowing her as you do, having been taught by her, clerking for her, to see these attacks on her faith, on her family, on her children. What's your reaction to that? What do you think her reaction is to it?
Well, you know, Judge Barrett is a model of class, civility, and integrity. And I think we'll see that be her reaction throughout. She will take this in stride, whatever comes, with courage and integrity, as she always does. And I think we will all have to do the same.
What do you think the chances are? And obviously you're probably pretty close to this, but from your perspective, do you think this nomination will make it through? Do you think she will sit on the Supreme Court?
I certainly hope so. I think she'd be a great addition to the Supreme Court. She's a fair and honest judge, committed to applying the law as it is written, impartially and without favor. I also think she'd be a historic addition to the court. You know, she's a mother of 7 with, you know, a working mom from South Bend, Indiana, and Notre Dame Law School. There's something so familiar about her and yet so powerful and aspirational. It's something I get excited about. I think it's something the country will get excited about, too.
I couldn't agree. I couldn't agree more. Though when this whole process started, you had to ask yourself, is she ready for this? I mean, she was just nominated or will be nominated by Donald Trump to the Supreme Court, 5 weeks before a presidential election. She has to know the incoming is going to be really without precedent. Is she worried?
Is she ready for this? Absolutely. I think her life is a testament to being ready for anything. She has been successful at every phase in her life and handled everything in stride, and I don't think this will be any different.
Man, it's an amazing story, and I hope you're right. Lexi, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
I appreciate it. We've got a live update from Cleveland, Ohio, where the presidential debate will begin at 9 p.m. Eastern. We should note it turns out that Joe Biden has not, contrary to what we told you in the last block, arrived at the debate hall. False alarm there. The press pool, which provides information on timing to all the networks, turned out to be wrong. We repeated their error. We're sorry about that. Joe Biden is instead expected to arrive any minute now. That's the point at which we lose our bet with Dana Perino. Then we should see the president arrive in Cleveland shortly after the former vice president does. Keep it right here. We'll be right back.
The commission finds
the first presidential debate between Donald Trump and Joe Biden about to begin in about 33 minutes. Peter Ducey live for us in Cleveland tonight with an update on what's happening there. Hey, Peter.
Tucker, good evening. Donald Trump still at his hotel, about a 2-minute drive when you're in a motorcade away from here. Joe Biden has been spending the last few hours at a private residence in Cleveland, where he has been for most of the time since he's been in Ohio. We do expect to see him, though, arriving any minute here at the debate location. You may have heard a little bit about this earlier today. In some last-minute negotiations about ground rules for tonight's debate, the Trump campaign was trying to pressure the Biden team into allowing a third party to come in and just make sure that neither of the debaters had any kind of an electronic device or a listening implement in their ears. And the Biden campaign said that they wouldn't do it. But now Joe Biden is trying to make this into a joke. He tweeted the following a few minutes ago: "It's debate night, so I've got my earpiece and performance enhancers ready." And you can see there's a photo of some earpieces, some earbuds, and ice cream. There were no cameras allowed at the only thing that Biden and Trump have done since they got into Ohio, which was this walkthrough. They were there separately. They did not run into each other. So we have not actually seen them since they landed, but we have seen some of the invited guests. We were just over there and saw some of Biden's top surrogates: Chris Coons, the senator from Delaware; Connor Lamb, the congressman from Pennsylvania; Tim Ryan, the congressman from Ohio, the host state. Something else, there are a lot of police, riot police and National Guard, very well protected outside just in case troublemakers do show up. Everybody that goes inside has to prove that they've got a credential, that they have a face mask, and that they have a wristband that says they got a COVID test negative at the Cleveland Clinic. Tucker?
Wow. Peter Ducey, thanks so much for that. A little bit of unexpected news tonight, pretty significant piece of it, actually. The Director of National Intelligence revealed declassified information today about the Russia probe. This could and should come up in tonight's debate. Here's what it is. Documents show that in July of 2016, in the last election cycle, U.S. intelligence intercepted analysis by their counterparts in Russia. According to the Russian analysis, Hillary Clinton, quote, approved a campaign plan to stir up a scandal against U.S. presidential candidate Donald Trump by tying him to Putin, end quote. Then CIA Director John Brennan briefed Barack Obama, then president, and other senior officials on the intercept. Was Joe Biden briefed about this? We're not sure. Seems like he would have been. The intelligence director also revealed that U.S. intelligence officials sent a referral for investigation to then FBI chief Jim Comey, saying that Clinton had hatched the plan as a, quote, means of distracting the public from her use of a private email server. Wow. Comey will appear tomorrow before a hearing at the Senate Judiciary Committee to answer questions about this and other issues. There are many. Senator Josh Hawley sits on that committee. He has been on top of the Russia investigation for a long time. We're happy to have him on tonight. Senator, thanks for coming. This seems like a kind of a bombshell late in the game.
Yeah, it's a big deal, Tucker. It's a very big deal to know that the CIA referred to the FBI for investigation, possible, let's just use the word collusion, between the Hillary Clinton campaign and Russia. And the FBI apparently did nothing. I mean, we'll find out. We'll have the opportunity to ask James Comey tomorrow, but it appears that they did nothing. Meanwhile, the FBI was busy lying to a federal court in order to get a wiretap on the Donald Trump campaign. I mean, this is the most unbelievable series of events, interference in a presidential election by the FBI against Donald Trump when they were had referred to them an investigation against Hillary Clinton. It's absolutely extraordinary.
But it went on for years. It derailed the first half of the Trump administration, I think it's fair to say. And we're learning about it now a little more than a month before his re-election day, before Election Day. So why are we learning now?
Yeah, because the deep state, Tucker, has held back this evidence, has done everything they can to sit on it. What is amazing is you listen to these people who come up before the Judiciary Committee. We've been having hearings on this, which you just mentioned. And you listen to Rod Rosenstein, for instance, was up before the committee a few weeks ago. I asked him, what happened? Tell us about lying to this federal court repeatedly, over and over and over. The FBI lied to this court in order to wiretap, in order to spy on the Trump campaign. Who's responsible? Lo and behold, no one will take any responsibility. Rosenstein said, oh, it wasn't me. Sally Yates said, oh, it wasn't me. So we'll find out tomorrow. Will Jim Comey take any responsibility? What we have here is an unprecedented attempt by the FBI to interfere in a presidential election. And now nobody wants to talk about it. Nobody wants to take any responsibility for it. Tucker, there needs to be responsibility taken. Heads need to roll, and there needs to be top to bottom reform at the FBI.
I should say the pictures you're seeing, I don't think you can see them centered on the screen, we think show the president arriving at the debate hall in Cleveland. Why has no one been punished for this? I mean, I've known people who were sentenced to long prison terms, in one case fairly recently, to the rest of his life for lying about things that didn't matter at all. Where is this famous investigation from the U.S. attorney that's going to make everything right and bring justice to all this? Have we been lied to again?
Yeah, well, hopefully it's hopefully it's coming soon, because I can tell you, Tucker, we've been told on the Senate committee and over, the Durham report, which is what you're referring to, the Durham, don't get ahead of the Durham report. The Durham report is coming. Don't step on the toes of the Durham report. So it better darn well come, and it better hold some people accountable. And you're right. I mean, what we have here is falsification of evidence. Let's just go back to this court, federal court, lied to over and over in order to get wiretaps on the Trump campaign. We know that the FBI actually falsified evidence in order to get those wiretaps. Somebody should go to jail for that.
I think that's exactly right. What a scam. The Durham report, any day now. Senator, thanks so much for coming on tonight. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
So mail-in balloting, almost certain to be a topic in about 25 minutes when the debate starts. There's clear evidence that mail-in balloting poses fraud risks. The latest example came today when we learned that nearly 100,000 New York City residents received mismarked mail-in ballots. Justin Haskins is a research fellow at the Heartland Institute. He's been following this subject carefully for a long time. He joins us tonight with an update on it. So mail-in balloting, and there are legitimate reasons people mail in their ballots, of course, absentee ballots. But on a scale like the one we're about to see on Election Day, how concerned should we be that fraud will be the result?
Oh, I think that we should be incredibly concerned, Tucker, not only because, as we're seeing in New York tonight, tons of confusion because of misprinted envelopes that were sent to people, return envelopes sent it alongside ballots in New York, absentee ballots that have the wrong name printed on them, which could invalidate people's votes. But also, in addition to all of that, just malfeasance that you might see from people casting incorrect ballots, either on purpose or maybe people just incorrectly casting ballots who don't really understand that their ballot isn't going to count. You also have people across the entire United States. Across the entire United States. I'm sorry, I'm losing you, Tucker.
Justin Haskins, I know you'll be back, and I'm sorry for the tech snafu that's preventing you from finishing your sentence, but I think I'd probably agree with what you're going to say, which is the people in charge of mail-in balloting are the same ones who are in charge of public education, who are the same ones in charge of mass transit in our big cities, who are the same ones in charge of keeping the streets clean. They don't make their own beds. These people are not capable of running a mail-in ballot election, I would say. Justin Haskins, sorry we lost you. Well, there are a lot of things making Joe Biden's handlers nervous right now, but probably nothing terrifies them more than the possibility that Joe Biden will be asked about his biography. It was just last year that Biden claimed that he went to a historically black college. He started there.
HBCUs. I got started out of an HBCU, Delaware State. Now, I don't want to hear anything negative about Delaware State here, okay? They're my folks. But all kidding aside, the fact is that HBCUs are in trouble financially. Let's remember why we had HBCUs. Because black folk couldn't go to white colleges.
So why would Joe Biden say something like that? Well, because his handlers told him to pander. Pander. Pandering's actually harder than it looks. That could be why this year Joe Biden simply decided that anyone who doesn't vote for him isn't actually black.
It's a long way until November. We got more questions.
You got more questions, but I tell you, if you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, then you ain't black.
Is this working? It seems pretty patronizing, actually. Why does he keep doing it? Candace Owens is the author of the book Blackout, How Black America Can Make Its Second Escape from the Democrat Plantation. We're always happy to have her on. Candace, great to see you. So will he continue in this vein? It doesn't seem like he needs to. He's getting a lot of the black vote already. Why does he do this?
Because it's actually who he is. That's actually Joe Biden being an honest person. He doesn't think that black Americans have the agency to think as individuals, and he believes the Democrat Party is owed the black vote based on pandering. It's excruciating, and it should actually frustrate and anger all black Americans to hear him say something like, oh, I don't understand why black Americans weren't allowed to attend these white colleges. That's why this exists. Let me remind everybody in America that Joe Biden was a person when he was a senator who was against school integration, was against the integration of buses because he insisted verbatim that black Americans liked being segregated. Now all of a sudden he flip-flops and we're supposed to forget his record on race. Kamala Harris certainly didn't forget his record on race when she was running against him until she got in line and suddenly doesn't think that he's a racist anymore. But the pandering has gotten really past a point, and I do believe that Joe Biden views black Americans as a group of people who need to behave. And you can sense his frustration when Charlemagne the God in that interview that you just showed says, you know, I have a few more questions. To him, we're not allowed to have questions, right? He believes that he is owed our vote, and all he has to do is give us 15 minutes of a pander amongst entertainers and rappers and stars.
So someone said to me today, this is just a guess, a prediction, we'll find out if it's true in about 20 minutes, but that Biden may try and push the president to say Black Lives Matter. Do you think Black Lives Matter, Donald Trump? What should Trump say if he says that?
I think Trump should talk about Black Lives Matter as an organization being separate, and he should ask Joe Biden back whether or not he believes that the rioting, that the looting, that the burning down that has taken place in black communities because of Black Lives Matter, the organization, which is really just a bunch of white liberals, right, white elitist liberals in blackface that are putting millions of dollars into this organization to watch black communities burn, right, so they can secure the black vote by pretending that all of this madness is happening under a President Trump administration. He should push that back and ask Joe Biden for an answer, and then just ask him a couple of questions about his record on race, because it isn't Trump that's been in the government for, as I believe Joe Biden said last week, 180 years. It isn't Trump. He's been in the government for a very long time, and his record is very shoddy.
That would be an amazing exchange if he were to say that. I wonder why more Republicans don't say that. Of course, Black Lives Matter. I mean, it goes without saying. That's a slogan. The organization is Marxist. It's against the family. It's against the United States. It's violent. Like, why is it so hard to make the distinction between the sentiment, which ought to be universal because all lives matter, it's the base of Christianity, and the lunatic organization?
Because this is the game that the left plays, Tucker. It's linguistics, right? It's like saying Planned Parenthood. Should you Planned Parenthood, Tucker? Of course you should. It would be great if we could all Planned Parenthood. But they're not planning parenthood. They're aborting babies, right? They've killed 18 million plus black babies since 1973. This is what the left is good at, playing with words when they're doing the exact opposite behind these organizations.
Man, that's a good point. How can someone say, you know, I really care about you, whatever community, and because I care so much about you, I'm going to put abortion clinics in your neighborhood just to make sure you don't have too many kids? Why does nobody call that out?
I certainly do. I call it out every day. And black Americans are beginning to wake up to this, and this is what the left is so fearful of. They are harping on race in a manner that they have never done in the past, and it's because you can sense their fear, Tucker. Something is cracking in black America. Yeah. It's a conversation we haven't had in decades, and I am so happy to be a part of it.
Well, you're absolutely right that people get extreme when they're afraid, when they feel cornered, when they feel their power ebbing. That's when they become really crazy. So I hope you're right. Something's going on. Candace Owens, great to see you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, one thing you can bet on for certain, because it never changes, is that at some point tonight in the 90-minute exchange between Joe Biden and the president, Joe Biden will call Donald Trump a racist. We've heard that for years, and the polls are showing that it may have diminishing returns. What actually seems to matter to people of all colors are the issues. And we've seen that in recent polling. Pedro Gonzalez, who is an assistant editor at American Greatness, wrote a fantastic and really insightful piece about this the other day, and he joins us tonight. Pedro, thanks for coming on. I hope that all of our viewers will read your piece on, basically, it's what Hispanic voters want from politicians, and it's really insightful. But one of the points you make in that piece is that the pitches that the campaigns are making to Hispanic voters are not actually what those voters care about. No. And I hope you'll be more articulate than I just was.
No, you're right. Trump is doing well with Latinos, not because of pandering, though there is pandering going on, like you pointed out, but because of his increasingly hard stance against rioting. The law and order message is broadly popular, but you're right, GOP analysts seem intent on missing this. Latinos are not much different than their white working class counterparts in Trump's base. They value their physical security. What good are things like tax cuts and anti-socialism talking points if your business and home and person are threatened every time agitators feel irritated by something?
Exactly. That's exactly right. So it's people with jobs. I mean, I think you could even deracialize it and just say people who work for a living don't like disorder because they're vulnerable to it. This seems very simple to me.
Yes, you're right. No, and I bring up that aspect because the GOP is starting to kind of recycle these talking points of, while denigrating their white base, they patronize Latinos by saying things like, well, the one group does the jobs that the other group doesn't want to do. That's not just untrue, it's morally repugnant. I think the Republican Party is falling back into this attempt to beat the Democrats at their own game, but they shouldn't do that. Trump should play his own game because he's good at it and the message is popular. Fight for everyday people, fight to keep our streets safe. Right now, federal immigration agencies plan to provide permanent residency to about hundreds of thousands. The number is somewhere between 100 and it's upwards of 150,000 workers, permanent residency. That benefits no one more than the Fortune 500s that are bankrolling organizations like Black Lives Matter, which in turn are fueling rioting. And so instead of backing off of these issues that I think the GOP rightly notes are controversial, they still resonate with people.
So if you see things in terms of class rather than race, you do better with the groups you're trying to pander to. In other words, if you just made a pitch to the working class, you would get a ton of Hispanic votes, correct? Is that what you're saying?
That is exactly correct. And I think on the law and order side, you saw a Gallup poll in July that found 83% of Latinos say they want more or the same policing in their neighborhoods. A June poll found 54% of Latino Democrats said they wanted the military to deploy with the police to put down rioting. 60% of Latinos said the same overall. That was an ABC News poll. In terms of immigration, in 2018, 58.5% of Latinos said they agreed with Trump's immigration policies, even though they disliked him personally. Most recently, 69% of Latinos said they supported a complete immigration moratorium during the pandemic. There's no reason the GOP should back off these issues. They're popular across the board.
Pedro Gonzalez, very smart. Great to see you tonight. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me.
So typically you hear the analysts say debates don't really matter. No one is saying that tonight. This debate matters. And this election matters. The filibuster, the Electoral College, the Supreme Court are all at stake. That's not an overstatement. It's literally true. So as we watch the debate, which begins in about 14 minutes, what should we be looking for? We want to end our analysis tonight with Victor Davis Hanson. He's a senior fellow at the Hoover Institute, one of the smartest people we ever talked to. Professor, thanks so much for joining us. So how should we be watching this? What should we be looking for?
Well, we want to see if Joe Biden will be
candid about what he believes in, because this is not, as you said, an issue or a disagreement over politics or policy or ideology. This is the first time in our lifetimes that we're talking about the structure, the rules in which we conduct politics. So I want to know, and I think you do, and everybody wants to know, after 150 years, are we no longer going to have a 9-person Supreme Court? After 233 years, are we no longer going to have an electoral college? After 190 years, are we no longer going to have a Senate filibuster? After 62 years, are we no longer going to have 50 states? Are we the inheritors of the American Revolution that fought a foreign power for liberty and freedom? Or now are we redefining 1776 and more in the spirit of the French Revolution, which is a class warfare with barricades on the streets? And he brought these structural issues upon himself, Tucker, because he is waging a virtual campaign. Not since Garfield and McKinley in 1896 have we seen a candidate stay on his front porch, but he's in his basement. So we've got millions of Americans, especially young Americans, that have never seen him in the flesh, and not at a rally, at a unscripted press conference, in a real live interview without a teleprompter. And so they're curious. They want to know if these rumors that he's cognitive challenged are just bunk or cruel, or they're accurate. They want to know what he thinks about the new Green Deal or reparations or yes, foreign policy changes we've had in the Middle East. And so he has a great chance, and he's got a great liability. If he comes across like he did with Sarah Palin and Paul Ryan and Bernie Sanders, and he's specific in these answers, then people are going to say, wow, I was wrong and the Republicans were wrong about this. On the other hand, if he comes across and says things like he's been in the Senate 180 years, or 200 people died of COVID, or he has a "you ain't black" type of outburst, and then he just says Trump, 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 Trump did this, Trump did, and he doesn't answer specific issues, then people are going to feel, Tucker, to be candid, they're going to feel they've been had. That this candidate was a virtual shadow candidate that was thrust upon them for a larger agenda to carry through the new Green Deal and the socialist protocols and policies that otherwise didn't get very much support in the Democratic primary.
It's a very reckless move. So in the about maybe 40 seconds we have, what should the president, what should his posture be tonight? How should he approach it?
Well, I think he's going to have to go. I don't think it helps much to go back over what he's done. I think everybody understands, they got the message that we had a booming economy and we had a lot of great foreign policies. What he's going to have to defend his policies, and you've had guests that made a very good point, that's not in a vacuum. Compared to the European countries or others, we're doing quite well. But then he's going to have to say that this is a time to choose. That I'm for the traditions and protocols of America, and I'm for the individual and free rights, and I want us to have race incidental, not essential to who we are. We're not a hyphenated society. Or we're going to revert to a tribal society. We're all going to identify by race. We're all going to be at each other's throat, and we're going to have diversity rather than unity. And so I think he can't back away from that. But he's going to have to ask Joe Biden. He's going to have to say, what do you believe about what's going on in Portland? I want to know what you want. What's your position on the 1619 project? Very specific. He's got to do that.
Boy, I hope he says exactly what you suggested he say. It's terrific. Victor Davis Hanson. Thanks, Professor.
Thank you.
That's it for us. We're about 15 seconds away from our pre-debate coverage with our friends Bret Baier and Martha MacCallum. They are in Cleveland tonight. About 10 minutes to go. We're going to turn it over to them.
A view shared by the most.
Thank you, Tucker, and good evening, everybody. Welcome to Cleveland, where we are just minutes away now from the start of the first 2020 presidential debate. I'm Martha MacCallum.
And I'm Bret Baier. We are live on the campus of Case Western Reserve University and the Cleveland Clinic. And the anticipation for this debate could not be higher. As we await the moment, President Trump and former Vice President Biden will face off for the first time, making their case to the American people.
So here is what we expect in the next few minutes. Tonight's moderator, our own Chris Wallace, will take the stage. He will greet an audience of a few dozen people behind us, and he will explain some of the ground rules while the candidates head to their holding areas backstage. After that, we're going to get some opening remarks, and then it will be game time, Brett.
And these are the chairs of the debate commission. Let's get some last-minute analysis from our all-star panel. Britt Hume, Dana Perino, Donna Brazil, Juan Williams, Katie Pavlich, and Karl Rove. Britt, this couldn't be a bigger moment. for all of those involved.
No, I entirely agree, Brett. This is a big deal. First debates often create impressions that prove hard to erase or change over the course of a campaign. And this is the first extended look we will have of Joe Biden in Donald Trump's presence, showing whether he is the senile old man that the Trump campaign claims, or whether he is capable, as he showed in his last debate with Bernie Sanders, of being sharp and on point. And I think if he does do that, I mean, I think he's senile, but I think he's fully capable and has shown it of having a good night. And if he has a good night, I think it could be a boost for him that could last for quite some time.
Dana Perino, we have seen President Trump debate before, but not for quite some time. And we've seen Joe Biden on the Democrat stage as he sort of slugged his way to the top. What do you expect tonight?
Well, I was thinking this morning that we have to remember that incumbents are very hard to beat. Only twice has that happened since World War II, and that's when the economy was really bad. That was in 1980 and then again in 1992. The economy before the coronavirus was very good at historic highs. So I expect President Trump to try to press that advantage and to remind people that he will be the one to bring those jobs back and that Joe Biden would not. Now, I would say that what Britt just said, that debates tend to harden whatever trends are already happening in the race. We talk a lot about you have to win the day. You actually have to win the next 90 minutes.
Donna, this is a big night for Chris Wallace as well. We're going to hear from him momentarily to talk to the crowd. He obviously had the last debate last cycle and now the first debate this cycle.
You know, Chris knows how to, get the candidates to talk about the issues that matter. We have